Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 108 of the North Meet South Web podcast.
So, Michael, before we started the show, you were commenting on my choice of headwear today. So, if you happen to be tuning in to the live stream, which maybe all one of you that's watching this on the live stream, you will get to see my ugly beanie, as Michael calls it. And I will tell you exactly what I told him, which is that I am wearing this beanie not for style or not for aesthetic, but for comfort because I'm cold and my head. So, like, here's the weird thing for me. Like, I feel like if I put like a hat on at some point during the day, I have to keep it on because as soon as I take it off, my head is freezing cold. So
Oh,
it's like, yeah, well, yeah. What? So
hair
you have a
goes
different
everywhere.
explanation. Sounds like hair goes everywhere. Well, yeah, that too. I do have a regular baseball cap I could wear, but no, man. It's like if I put this hat on, like it's so warm that I just can't take it off, and
hmm
so it is not time for bed yet. So I have still got this hat on, and if again, if you're on the live stream, you'll notice it's like very you know long on top of my head. It's because I'm using my AirPods. And if you've ever tried to put something over top of your AirPods, like one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to be painful because they're like jamming in your ears
Mm,
now, or it's like really scratchy if you've got like transparency mode on because it's like trying to listen with the microphone on the outside and push that through, and like your hat's all scratchy up on it.
yeah.
So, it just doesn't. I'm over it, right? Like, who am I trying to impress here, right?
That's
We're friends here. We're
right.
friends here. I can just do whatever. It doesn't matter. So thanks for bearing with me, everybody out there in user land watching along. Again,
Anyone
all
that's
one of you.
watching the stream or happens to catch this later, I apologize that I'm sniffling in advance. It won't be in the audio
Ah,
version because that'll get cut out. But I've got the hay fever is back again viciously, so
indeed.
just sniffling,
And
and then
and
I
again,
I, I sprayed this stuff up my nose to sort of make it
okay,
stop, and that's just made it run more. And I
yeah,
went
yeah.
grocery shopping this morning and I had the mask on, but the mask was pinching the top of my nose. So it's just like dripping inside my mask. I'm like, ugh,
Oh gosh.
it's just
Oh man,
annoying.
that's fun times. Yes. And also for those of you who are American listeners who don't understand this, because I didn't, hay fever is what we say are allergies. And Michael has explained previously it doesn't make sense that you would call them allergies because that could be allergies to all sorts of different things, right? It's like you have like a peanut allergy. Is that what's going on? Like, no, it's not that. It's like hay fever, allergies with like pollen and whatnot.
hmm
So, hay fever, for those of you who are uninitiated, it's not that Michael's like out cutting hay in a field and getting really like messed up
Although
with
that would
hay.
make it worse. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. It's allergy season, and Mr. Dorinda is got the sniffles along with some of your family members, right? So for
Yes. Well, they
hey,
Re had to go and get yet
it's
another
that
COVID
changing the
test.
seasons.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Re
it's
had to
like
go and get
just
another COVID test because
okay.
she was negative. I think this is the third time this year she's had laryngitis, which is like throat infection. So,
You got to
but
catch up with all the stuff she didn't get sick with the last 2 years, I
yeah.
suppose, right?
So I'm a
I
little
feel
bit
like that's what's happening
concerned
with my
because
kids.
I'm a little bit concerned because if they all get sick, like Ree and the kids, there's like one after the other, but all three of them are
Right?
sick at the same time. So my body can cope with like one after the other, but all three at the same time is a bit much. So
Yeah,
I'm worried that
you're getting
after three
attacked at all
years, yeah,
sides.
I'm a
Yeah.
bit worried that after 3 years I might get sick again.
Oh no. Oh no. Hopefully not. Fingers crossed, my friend. We'll have to take a week off if that's not the case. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's funny because we're similar, like we're on the same train. Like I feel like all my kids like got sick at the same time. So we were with family for the holidays and thankfully nobody had COVID, whatever. So we were still able to get together and it was
hmm
wonderful. But one of my nephews did show up with a cough and they were like, no, we tested him. Like, he's negative for COVID, but he does have this cough. And we're like, okay, well, whatever. Like we still really all wanted to be able to see each other, which was great. But we came home and all of my kids within the week had coughs, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
thankfully, again, no COVID, but it's like I feel like our immune systems are kind of like really like weak and like
A little
nobody
bit
can get
shot,
away with
yeah.
not getting sick because
Yeah.
we haven't been around people that much for a while. So
hmm
you're just catching up with all the sickness that you haven't had for a little while here. So
Yeah.
anyway, but we're mostly over it, so I'm glad for that.
That's
I'm
good.
feeling pretty good. Yeah. Well, hey man, it's we didn't get to record last time because of what I just mentioned, which was that we were in Ohio for Thanksgiving with my family last time as this recording rolled around. So took a little bit of a week off there, and it's been you know how holiday times are, and
Yeah.
we actually do have a special episode coming up, which will hopefully make up for some of that on the 18th in 2 weeks. we will be recording our North meets South meets Dads and Dev meets Chris Gamir meets TJ Miller Christmas extravaganza podcast
Yeah.
extraordinaire, something, I don't know, something like that. And so that's always a Christmas annual tradition for us. I'm looking forward to that. Man, like there's so many fun things that I've tried to figure out what we can do. Like I want to have like trivia, I want to have like a soundboard, I want to have like a whole setup, man. I'm really excited, but I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do yet. But
You
I
got
don't
2 weeks
know.
to
Like
figure it out.
last exactly. I got 2 weeks to figure it out. I gotta load up some stuff and hopefully it'll be a really fun show. People can join in live and watch along and play along. Maybe that'd be fun. So yeah,
Hmm.
we'll see what we can come up with. Yeah. So we've had some changes going on over on your side of things, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then also, we are going to talk about. I don't want to give it away too much. So we're going to talk about a specific problem that one of our friends in Cash Money Co-work was having, and sort of some different solutions you can come into around that. Also, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, which was that there is another podcast called No Compromises, not to be confused with No Plans to Merge. Have you heard of this one? It's Joel and Aaron.
Yeah, Joel and Aaron. I listened to that one. I like, I
I
like the
do,
cut of their jib.
I do too. It's really good. So Joel is actually a Laracon Bloomington dude. So he comes
Oh,
down to Laracon or he comes down to Bloomington whenever we do Laracon like meetups down there. And so he's been like a faithful member the last 3 or 4 times we've had it. He usually brings down like some Wisconsin cheese and beef jerky because he's just that type of guy, just a good dude. And he also goes to Longhorn PHP every year, I know. And I think he presented at Longhorn PHP this year, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it's a really good podcast. There's some really, really cool topics they talk about on there, and I feel like they
they
do a
keep
really great job.
they
So
keep them short and they're informative as well. Like they come into their podcast with a plan, whereas we kind of just wing it.
yeah, exactly. I know, exactly. Yeah, but they do a really great job, and so I've learned a lot. And I actually have just been listening to them on like I've been catching up with all the episodes I haven't listened to. So if you're looking for another podcast to sort of fill your time, check those guys out. They do a really great job. Maybe we should have them on sometime. Just talk. That'd be fun.
Maybe.
There's some old web devs though who have seen some things, so who knows if they're I don't know if this is too late for them. 10:30. Oh
Possibly.
boy, on a Saturday night.
Possibly.
Yeah, I'll have to get in touch with Joel and see what his timeline looks like for that. So hey man, tell me what's going on with employment with Dorinda over in the
Mm.
AU.
Yeah. So I finished up at my what was my current job, I suppose. Last week. So I've been off work for a week and starting a new job on the 4th of January. So I'm leaving telco
Very exciting.
after the better part of my entire 15-year career and going to try my hand in fintech. So it was funny. I
Yeah,
was
that's pretty
joking.
cool, man.
I went to this new company's Christmas party on Friday night and was
Oh,
joking with
nice.
them because they've actually been trying to get me to take a meeting with them for 3 years. Like 3 years to the day, I think it was that they first messaged me where I finally um, accepted a position with them. So I'm going to be going over there as a technical lead and helping them out with their platform. So they do um, asset finance, mortgage broking, things like that. But they do that for the brokers. So they do B2C, so business to consumer, where they're
Okay,
doing lending or they're not a lender themselves, but they sort of aggregate all the different lenders here in Australia. And then
sure.
the
Sounds
other
like a
part of
like a
the
lending tree sort of deal, almost like what we have. Like they'll kind of search around for the best
Mhm.
like loan for you, sort of deal.
Yep. That's
Gotcha.
exactly what it is. And then so that's one part of it, which was the original part of the business where they built that out. And then the new part of the business now is the bit that I'm going in to sort of help focus on is the B2B side of things, which is the sort of the business to business, the facilitating for the brokers and that kind of stuff itself. So if you've ever had to apply for a loan, I don't know if this is the same over there because your banking system is a little bit further along than what ours is. But for us, there's a
Okay,
lot of paperwork. There's a lot of manual stuff. You've got to fill out forms. You've got to provide all of your like um, proof of income and things like that. You've got to
sure.
list out all of your assets and liabilities and expenses and that kind of stuff. And all of that's very manual. And if you're going through a broker, particularly for a home loan, the broker's like, I need you to fill all this out, and then you need to get it back to the broker, and then the broker needs to check it and then send it back to you, and then you need to send it back to them, and then they send it, onto whichever lender it is. So this is basically bringing that entire process online. And so the broker then goes, says, here's your link, fill out all of the stuff, and then because it's all online, we make sure that everything is correct ahead of time. So before you can even submit that application, that paperwork back to the broker, we make sure that we've got all of the expenses. We make sure that we've got the employment history. We make sure we've got all of the proof of income and all of that kind of stuff. So the process gets much quicker. It's much more accurate when you're, obviously verifying all that information without the back and forth and the emails and things like that. So it's an interesting space. They're quite a big business. They've been around for sort of 10, 12 years. And they're sort of on the cusp of their next big step, which is exciting to be part of. So being part of the journey over the next sort of 3 to 5 years, hopefully, and then sort of getting in there and looking at what they've got. So this is probably the most Laravel that I have seen in the wild in terms of places that I've worked. It's
sure.
And places where like it already exists, where I'm coming into it and it's already
That's pretty
there,
nice.
as opposed to my last job where we didn't do any Laravel at all, and then the job before that where part of the process was to bring Laravel into the business and to sort of set up that. So this is already established, and from what I've seen of their code base and of their platform and all of that, it's what you would expect a pure Laravel application to be. Everything is where it's supposed to be. Their philosophy from their CTO is essentially like, whenever we're looking to do something new, we go to the Laravel docs and see like, how does Laravel do it, and then we kind of do that. So they follow the Laravel way, as it were, to sort of make sure all of that works. So it'll be a matter of just figuring out where they're at, what gaps they have in terms of that process. So there's some stuff there around like their deployments are still manual, where the CTO will have to log in and they need to, do all the installation steps. So it'd be bringing in processes, pipelines, whatever, Envoyer to sort of automate that process, just to streamline it, to bolster their testing stocks, to make sure that they've got coverage over the critical parts of the application, and to sort of work directly with the chief product officer, the CTO, to kind of add features to the business and the application, and then also to lead the offshore dev team. So they have a team of, I think, 5 or 6 developers in the Philippines that have helped build out their platform over the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting. It'll be getting back into sort of that leadership space that I left and thought that I didn't want to do, but turns out it's what I want to do. And to sort of, have a little bit more oversight over what's happening. And
I think when you
being part of that process. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think when you do step back into sort of that like pure Laravel space, I think there's a couple things. I think number one, a business that does that really gains a lot of momentum just by the nature of doing it that way, because you open the doors to being able to use offshore developers, whether it's in the Philippines or whether it's in India or whether it's wherever, really. Anybody that has used Laravel can step into an app like that and just not immediately be effective, but a lot more quickly be effective than it would be if it was like some combination Frankenstein version of like, and again, I mean, there are use cases for using stuff other than Laravel for sure. But like when you are able to sort of just keep it pure Laravel, it makes it way, way, way faster to onboard a new developer. Because like you said, you can just go look at the docs and how does this work? Look at the docs. You don't have to rewrite the docs. It's already there.
And we've spoken about this on the show before. The more like Laravel it is, the less time you spend having to onboard people into your code base and more time teaching them about the business. So when I went in there and had a look at what they had, I was like, okay, so this is Laravel, so teach me about your product. That was the main part.
Exactly. Done with that, right.
So I mean, my only reservation is that it's a separate, I don't know if it's in a mono repo necessarily. I didn't look that closely at it, but it's a separate Vue SPA and a Laravel backend API.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, par for the course for Laravel, it's fairly standard to do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So that's the only thing. So I'll have to pick up Vue after 2-3 years and get back into that. So
the good news is there's lots of wonderful tools for both of those stacks, and they work together really well, right? Yeah. So you've got like Enzyme, or I guess even Jest you can probably use for, I think can you kind of shoehorn Jest in with like Vue? Can you do that? or is there a different tool for that?
I assume so.
Okay, yeah.
It's just,
I didn't know if Jest
firing
was
it
just a
up
React
and
thing or not. Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Yep. And so you got
So-
that, and then you got all your wonderful stuff for Laravel, whether it's Pest or PHP Unit or whatever have you. Yeah. So I am curious that you said like, one of the things you said is when you're coming on, like, you want to sort of bolster some of the tests. It has been interesting for me. We've been looking to hire another developer again, and the people that I interview, a lot of them are like, hey, how long have you been working in Laravel? Oh man, I've been working in Laravel since like, I don't know, like version 3, version 4. Like, okay, great. And like, what would you say is your strongest skill? What would you say is your weakest? And like, I've had 2 or 3 of them of like the 3. Well, I guess I've only interviewed 3 in the last couple days. But like all 3 of them were like, yeah, testing. I'm just not strong at testing. Like I've only maybe done a little bit of that. And I'm like, seriously, like you've been working with PHP and Laravel for like 6 years and you don't do tests? Like what in the world?
I mean, Laravel is probably the simplest of all of the PHP ecosystem to get started with testing. It's definitely a first class citizen in Laravel. But the other side of that coin, because Laravel is really good at being a rapid application development tool, a lot of the time you just hit the ground running and you just start building stuff and building stuff and building stuff, and you never circle back. And I know that Mohammed, he's a big proponent of like write the thing, make it work, then go back and write the tests.
Interesting.
I know that, Frake and I think even Frake kind of does the whole spike and stabilize and then go back and write the test in some situations. But, we've got people like, well, I mean, not Adam, long live Adam Wathen, he's just a CSS guy now. But, he was a big proponent of testing and things like that. And TDD is so prevalent in our community. But just seeing a lot of the people that Nuno retweets, talking about Pest and how they're like, I'm taking Pest for a spin and I'm writing my first test and things like that. It's super common, in spite of testing being a first class citizen in the Laravel ecosystem.
Yeah,
for people to not do it, and that's why JMac has got the test generator as a shift that you can run to kind of get you up and running, to inspect your Laravel applications and kind of build all that stuff out for you, so that you've got a starting point.
Absolutely, which is really, I mean, so for any of you who don't know who JMac is, that's the guy who wrote Laravel Shift. And so the shift that he has will essentially write out these tests for you, but it will then mark all of them as skipped. So when you run your tests, it's just going to put S in there for that one. It's not going to fail. It's just going to say skipped and no big deal. But then what you can do is you can go back into those tests later and you can get them to work. So you could say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna run this shift. I'm gonna let it generate all these tests for me that I'm going to skipped. And then every week, I'm going to take the time to write out the tests for one of the controllers, right? I'm just going to go through the different methods with this controller, and I'm just going to write the tests to make sure that this is going to work, right? And that's super valuable, and it doesn't take that much time, and it's a great way to essentially, it doesn't lower the barrier, it almost eliminates the barrier to entry when it comes to tests, because it writes them for you, right? And so I think it could be a really good way for people to get started with it, even if all it's doing is just checking to make sure. And this is like, I can't remember the guy who put this out there on Twitter. It's a dude who works with, is it Livewire? I think it's Livewire, and he has like this, or no, maybe it's Alpine, and he has like this, a couple different plugins and stuff that he's made for it. Regardless, anyway, he said, even if all you're doing is just writing a test that says, make sure I get a 200 when I hit this route, right? Just that inspires some confidence, so that when you add a new page, you add a new test that just says, can I get a 200 when I hit this? Yes. And then you run your unit tests before you ship and just make sure you can get 200s on any of those pages. That's almost, it's better than nothing for sure. But then from there,
it's better than introducing like a typo to that page or something inadvertently when
totally
you're working on it, and at least you know that the page still works. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, right? You get a syntax error in there or whatever, and now that page is blowing up, and then it stops working, right? So, these sort of, Adam almost talked about these things as, it's not exactly the same. It's sort of related though. So, like when you're getting started making products, a tripwire product, right? Something that you can just get somebody to buy one time, like something that's like $5, right? Doesn't take a ton of time to build. It's just, you're just getting something to buy you're just getting someone to buy something from you, right? It's like a really quick win, right? And that's the same idea with this. It's like, just get a couple quick wins under your belt and you're going to feel a lot more comfortable, getting started, right? And I think Pest does also do the same thing. Pest sort of lowers the barrier to entry, and it says like, oh, you don't need to remember to use refresh database at the top of your test or spend an hour trying to figure out why it's saying that table doesn't exist. It's just Pest just handles it. It'll just run it for you, sort of deal.
Yep.
So it's cool. It's cool. It's good to hear that there's more adoption of tests being done. But I think, JMX says like 18% of the things that he shifts have tests, like 18%. It's like nothing,
I
very,
know
very
three
little.
of the
So
apps that I regularly put through Shift have basically no tests. Because
Yeah.
they've been around since, I think they're circa 2015, 16 when they were built. And some of the stuff that I've added since then, I've put Pest into it and I've added tests for the new stuff, but I haven't really gone back onto the old stuff because it's really badly written code. And so I just keep waiting because like every year, because it's like a once a year application that they run. So every year they're like, oh yeah, we'll revisit it next year and we'll rewrite it. And they never end up doing it. So hopefully
you never have the time to do it. Yeah, exactly. Yep, I hear you. So anyway, not to shame anybody who doesn't do tests. This is just an encouragement to be like, hey, let's do some, just do a couple, right? And I understand like I'm in a very privileged position where the person I report to was also the guy that I started the development team with at my organization. So Jordan Brill, you know who he is. He highly values these sorts of things, right? So I don't have to sell him on anything. Like if I didn't write it with tests, he'd be like, where are the tests at? Right. So I'm at a huge advantage because I don't have to justify the time I'm taking to write tests. Yeah. He would say like, why would there not be tests there? Right. And so, it's a pretty great spot to be in. But
it's fairly common as well.
It's hard to find
to hear that kind of story from people that like, oh, my boss won't give us time to write the test or anything like that. And it sounds like the same kind of thing here. And I said, well, you don't tell them that you're writing tests. You just make sure that your estimates include the time it takes to write those tests.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's going to save you so much more time down the road. So you don't say, I need this much time to write tests and this much time to write the code. You just say it's going to take whatever that time is to do it, and then just do the test. It's on us as developers to kind of make sure that the code we're writing is reliable and durable and things like that. And then you're obviously not going to you're not going to catch every single edge case when you're building out a new piece of functionality, as long as when it comes time to fix a bug with that functionality, because the bug will happen. It's a matter of when, not if. As long as you're writing the test for that failing case and then fixing it to make sure that A, it is fixed, and B, you don't accidentally break it again in future, then you're doing your job as a developer. It's not up to your employer to, it shouldn't be up to your employer to tell you how to write code. Testing is just part of writing code. So,
and I think that would be my only argument for doing the testing while you're doing the development, right? Instead of waiting until afterwards, because then the big temptation is, I've got this deadline, like I don't have any tests written yet. It's okay. I'll just ship this feature. It'll be fine, right? And so, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily what Muhammad is proposing, because I get what he's saying, where it's like, there will be a lot of times where I sort of spike out the base functionality and then like, okay, once I get to a part where I'm like, this is a little bit complicated here, then I start putting in some tests or whatever. Like I get that. Like there are some things I don't have to test because I don't need to test that the framework works, right? I just need to test that the codes that I'm writing with the framework works. So anyway, yeah, we can get off that train if we want, but I'm excited that you'll be able to kind of get back to a spot where you're going to be using Laravel on a regular basis. I know that feels like home. It feels like a warm blanket to your soul. Just like
and just
snuggle
like
up with some Laravel.
The freelance stuff that I've been doing for you. I even went to Ree and I said, gee, I really miss writing PHP in Laravel. Like I really miss working with Laravel and just like the freedom that it gives you, all of the stuff, like all of the bits and pieces that it includes, the validation, the request response stuff, all of that you just don't need to worry about, that I was crafting by hand, when I was encountering a missing piece, like rebuilding it essentially. So we had it. So it's just, I think people that subscribe to a sunk cost fallacy in terms of like, we spent so much time building this and we've used it for so long. Why would we change and all that kind of stuff? They kind of miss out on how much more they could be doing in the same amount of time when they don't have to worry about all of the the security stuff and the authentication and the authorization and like handling responses and returning JSON and all that kind of stuff. Like when you get rid of the stuff that you don't need to focus on, that's not unique to your application, and just really knuckle down on your business and your business needs and goals, then there's like, whether it's Laravel or it's Symfony or it's, you know, Rails in Ruby or you know, whatever in Python, Django in Python, it doesn't matter what language. There's frameworks available for all of them, really, or for the main ones, the main web ones. I can't really see why. I mean, I can understand bringing components together, you know, bringing your own
Sure.
Symfony components together and building your own implementations of PR7 interfaces and things like that you can ship around and reuse. But academically, that sounds like a good idea. For a business, I think, you know, if you've got a business that's like, we don't have time to write tests, then how is that the same business that also doesn't, you know, that has time? Sorry, if you have a business that doesn't have to write tests, how is that the same kind of business that has the time to kind of build the world from scratch every time?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Oh man, yeah. I don't know. I feel like I remember that world, and it was so painful. Oh, it was just so bad.
Yeah.
And you didn't know what you didn't know, right? That was the other scary part. Is it's like, man, I sure hope I'm doing this right.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I hope I don't have to wake up one morning and find out I wasn't doing it right, because, you know, with something that's open source, you get a whole bunch of other smart people, or people that are a lot smarter than you, solving those problems. And that Adam Wathan literally just said this on Twitter. He said, like, the one really cool thing about having Tailwind CSS out there is that people are using it that are a lot smarter than me, and they're really happy to contribute to make it better. And it's just awesome, right? And so I feel like I get that wonderful benefit in Laravel as well. Just, you know, I can't remember the name of that guy was. That's that security tester dude who was talking about all that stuff that we talked on Laravel News about last time. But, you know, people like that who have this expertise with, like, you know, ethical hacking almost, but you get the benefit of those people being able to look at the Laravel code and be like, I don't think that's actually secure, and then they fix it. It's just great. It's great. Hey, so with that out of the way, I thought maybe we could spend just a couple minutes talking about this other issue that TJ brought up. TJ Miller, our good buddy TJ Miller, Mr. 6 Live, and maybe some possible solutions for how this could work. So I can talk about my particular brand of this, and then we can talk about how TJ was looking to do this. But well, let's just start with TJ's version. So basically, here's the question that TJ asked. He said, let's see if I can get down to it. Uno momento. Okay, here's what he says. So let's say I have an app with two types of users. We have customer and merchant. How would I best set this up? I was thinking having a normal user model and table, and then having a customer and a merchant table that then extends the user, and then have like a relationship between the two. Or I could have a type column on the user, or I could just do some sort of like role privileges stuff and attach a role to the user as well. And that might be a good way. So he was just looking around like, how can I do this, right? What is the best way to do this? So I thought we could kind of discuss these different methods and pros and cons. And then, you know, you've also talked about, or we talked a little bit before the show about how you guys were doing this previously. And then we can talk about this package that sort of helps. It's like a cheat code to the whole thing, I feel like, and is a method, is a package that I've used before in a project of mine. So what's your take on this, Michael? So you have two different types of users, customer and merchant. What's your take on it?
I mean, if it's a customer and a merchant, and it's always just going to be a customer and merchant, then probably just the flag on the table field, really. It depends on how you're breaking up the application, and whether or not there's significance in terms of like a customer logs into a customer portal and a merchant logs into a merchant portal. If there's restrictions around what they can and can't see based on that type. But I don't think, like, you could build policies around the user type, for example, even. And
that's true. That'd be pretty easy,
that
actually.
makes it pretty simple. So,
Yeah, I think it does. Like a lot of this, the answer to this question does depend upon what the application needs are. If all you need to do is just be able to differentiate between two user types, and that's it, then you're fine.
Mm.
The question I think becomes like how much behavior is attached to the fact that they're a merchant or the fact that they're a customer, right? Is there additional behavior that is attached to these, not just permission level, but behavior? So like, are there custom? Are you going to have to check like when you're calling a method on this user, are you going to have to check to see if they're a merchant or if they're a customer inside of that method and then do different behavior based on that? Because if that's the case, then you sort of do enter this other realm where I feel like it makes it worth it to talk about what we're going to talk about, right? And so in the case where I'm talking about this, that would be the situation, right? I have a customer, I have a merchant, and the behavior that is going to be expected for each of those particular classes, you might say, is going to be significantly different. And I would like to be able to just call the method on the thing and not have to do an additional conditional check, right? So essentially, when I retrieve a user out of the database, I would like to not ever have to check again what it is. Like, is it a customer? Is it a merchant? I would like the application to just know which type I'm dealing with and automatically interpret my requests to those things in a way that is just transparent to me as the developer, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is this idea of polymorphism. So polymorphism, I remember for me was a very odd concept when I first was learning about it. But essentially, what it is it allows you to take the values inside of a database record and then pair that with a type column, which contains the type of class. You can think of it almost as a class cast, if you will, for a database record. So what it will do is when you retrieve a record out of the database, it will look at the type column. It will look at what class is assigned there, and then it will attempt to cast those attributes to that particular class. And then it will use that class as you're referencing that record, right? So you may have different types of users, like we have in this case, customers and merchant. And then in that type column, what you'd have is you just have the customer class, and then you'd have the merchant class. And so this is kind of what polymorphism does, is you just have this morph map, right? You might call it. And instead of referencing the class specifically, you can reference a string, and then it'll do exactly what we just said, which is basically when you retrieve it out of the database, it will go ahead and cast to that class, and then you have all the methods and the behavior that is on that class available to you without having to check, is it a customer or is it a merchant? You look like you're messing with something over there. Is your camera falling down?
Sorry, my sister tried calling me and hijacked my camera, and now my camera won't come
Oh no.
back.
Oh no. Bummer.
That's all right. Please continue.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. And so there's this additional sort of layer of this. And I'm trying to remember exactly how this works because it has been so long since I've dealt with this. But there's polymorphism, and then there is single table inheritance, right? And this is sort of this is where I get fuzzy on stuff. Have you dealt with this in particular? Like, have you ever used this package? It's so funny because like I'm like, this is the package I used. It solved all my problems, and then I'm coming back to the package and I'm like, single table inheritance. What is that again, right? And I think maybe so in the case of what I was talking about before, the polymorphism, I feel like, is that typically a relationship? Do you usually call that as a relationship?
Yeah, so polymorphism is like you'd have the user, but then you'd have a delegate of some description, which would then go and get what the underlying model is. So you would still have a morph to, like, you would still have a customer model and a table and a merchant model and table. Everything would be a user, and then you would like reach through that relationship to get whatever the entity is, I suppose.
Oh, thank you. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Yep.
Whereas,
so you go ahead.
Go on.
So like in the instance where I used polymorphic relationships, what I actually had is I had a forms table, and then I had so like basically in our organization we have So we're going to rewind this a little bit, folks. So let me try and clarify here because my brain is sort of back to where it should be. So the situation that I have in my company is that I have this paperless forms is what we call it. So we have a bunch of different forms that people need to fill out, whether it's for HR or it's like a building service request, like, hey, the paper towel dispenser in the men's bathroom is broken, or the light above my cubicle is out, or the sidewalk needs salted, whatever it is, right? Like that's a building service request. Or, hey, I need information about my benefits, or we need to reactivate an old claim that a customer just called in about, or whatever you might have. So all these different forms. But I need to be able to keep track of at a high level, like all of those forms, because I need to be able to see what forms particular users submitted, and then each of those forms is sort of dispatched to a different group in the company to be handled. So I have a top level forms table, but then I also have all of the data that belongs to each one of those specific forms. So a building service request, a file reactivation request, a document restore request, and all of those are different tables, right? So at the top level, you have the form, and then you have the form ID, and then you have the form type. And so then what you can do is I say form, and then I say arrow subform, which is sort of like the relationship there. And then what it'll do is it will allow me to retrieve that actual form that was filled out, right? So the building service request. So that's that polymorphic relationship. The one that I was talking about, where it just automatically casts it to a class, is this single table inheritance. So that's the package that Caleb Porzio created like 4 years ago, something like that. I remember him and Daniel talking about this for like, I think 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah.
At one time.
Yeah.
So we can talk about this a little bit too.
Single table inheritance is having different types or different variants of the same thing. So where the polymorphic is a descendant of the foreign, like the parent record. So in your example, you've got the form and then you've got the subform with polymorphism, and then you can have different types of subform. With the single table inheritance, everything is a form in your example, or everything in this specific instance is a user. So everything goes into the users table. Everything is a user, but they have child element or child models themselves that reference back to that. So you would have a merchant model and you would have a customer model, but they would all belong to the users table in this instance. And so that would extend from the user model. They'd get all of the behaviors of the user model. They'd be authorizable, authenticatable, notifiable, all of that kind of stuff. But essentially, this means that you can call like admin first, or you could query that table from the admin model, from the merchant model or the customer model. And so that gives you the ability to sort of keep everything in the same table, but have different instances. So you'd still have to do your instance of checks to see, like, is this a merchant or is this a customer? But you can encapsulate all of that in a policy. You can do all that kind of stuff in decorators. You could, have the user model delegate and say, like, can this user do this thing? And then it would just delegate down to the specific type of user, and then figure out like, hey, is this a merchant? Can they be here, kind of thing. So shoving that all into the same table rather than having and it's solving different problems, I think, to what polymorphism does. I think the classic example, the one I'll see if I can dig up on Adam Wyland's website. He's got an article using like pushing behavior to the database and then talking about doing like coupons. And then like you could have like a % off coupon and a $1 coupon and a $1 discount coupon and things like that. And I've leveraged that sort of behavior quite a bit at my 2 jobs ago, I suppose, when we put together our discount system, in terms of like, when you sign up, you could enter a voucher code and that would give you like $5 off for 6 months. And that's like a type, that's a distinct type. Or you've got like a once off $50 off credit, buy this particular router and you can get $50 off. And so all of these things have like an apply method on them. And so when you want to do anything in terms of processing that discount, you would call the specific, like there would be a relationship. You'd call the relationship which would then return an instance of the polymorphic model, and then call apply, which is defined on that distant model, and it will do whatever it needs to do to the cost. So if you pass in $100 and then you say apply to this model, it would then say, okay, well, I need to do this as a once-off, and I'll apply a $50 credit, so that $100 becomes 50. Or, it's $100 per month, and we need to add a discount, and so when you apply, it will go and create a discount in a discounts table and things like that. So, I think that kind of hopefully explains the scenario there. But
I know it is a bit muddy, isn't it? Like even as I'm talking about it,
without
right.
like the visuals, it's harder to. It's always harder to explain. Daniel and Caleb are much better at explaining things orally. I've noticed than we are. We kind of just glaze over it. But I think in this particular instance, to circle back to TJ's original issue, the parental package and then the single table inheritance would probably get him most of the way. Especially if it's only a couple of records. There's no need to complicate it with roles and abilities and permissions and all of that kind of stuff that is another layer on top. You could just have users that have roles and define them that way, but it depends on how complex you want to get. If you literally just want to have a customer and a merchant, well, they can all be, users of type customer or user of type merchant and handle it that way. So that's how I would do it.
Yeah, I agree. And so this is, in Caleb's explanation of what this parental package does, it basically allows you to have a user model and then extend that model with a class called, and let's just use TJ's example, you'd have customer and merchant, right? So customer would extend user, merchant would extend user, but both of those reference the exact same table, which is the user table, right? And so when you call customer : first or merchant : first, they're both referencing the user table, right? That's what they're referencing, is that one table
based on the type.
You got it. Exactly right. And so you are able to basically store it all in the same format, but you have different models that you can use to reference that one table, which is pretty cool. And so, I've used this in a couple different places. I don't think it was specifically for this. I think it was for something else. I think it was like we had different types of refunds, but all of them were so similar. They just needed a different type, right? And I just needed to be able to store them in this one table. So instead of hey, I didn't want to create 3 different types of tables. They're all so closely similar. I just wanted this one table, and I just wanted to be able to reference them by their class name. And so instead of creating 3 separate tables, I created one refund table, and then now I could just, use the individual models that I had that extended that one base refund model, that refund table, right? So I had a overcharge refund, or I had a what was it? There was an underpayment, or there was an overcharge, or there was a late payment or some refund or something like that. There was 2 or 3 different types of refunds. And again, there was one column different between most of them, but 95% of everything else was the exact same. So instead of trying to keep those columns in sync across 3 separate tables, because that's always the thing for me, right? It's that's the worry, as I'm always I know that most of this has to be the same. So instead of trying to sync those across those 3 different tables with just small differences, keep it in the same table and just make a couple extra columns that the other ones aren't going to use. And it ended up working out pretty well. So good luck to you, TJ. I hope that works out for you. It was funny because he messaged that this morning. It was at 9:00, and I had a message all typed out, and then my wife was like, "We have family pictures. Let's go. We gotta get the kids out of here." I'm like, "Dang it, that's right. I totally forgot." And so I'm rushing out the door, and then TJ later messaged, "I guess this is what I need with Caleb's package." I was like, "Thank God you found that, because that was exactly what I was going to suggest." It works super well. So nice job, nice work. Thanks, Caleb. Giving us wonderful things even 4 years ago, and he's updated as of 2 months ago. Looks like, or Steve King did anyway.
Nice.
Yes, indeed. All right, man. Well, hey, listen, that's about all I have. Anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap this one up?
No, well, I was hoping my new MacBook would be here today, but
yes,
it took a detour from Sydney to Melbourne before it comes here. So hopefully tomorrow or Tuesday I'll see it turn up, assuming we don't close our borders, because
who knows, right?
We were supposed. So Australia is opening up again for domestic travel, and we're starting to let some people internationally filter in. But the goal for South Australia was when we get to 80% double vaxxed, which they expected to be the 23rd of November, we'd open our borders. November 23 rolled around, we opened our borders, but we were only at like 78% vaxxed. So it was never really about the percentage. Apparently, it was just like, let's just pick a date and go there. We were like a week behind. I think we're at 80% now. But realistically, you know, we've been very shielded from the rest of the country in terms of we're a bit more spread out. We're not as densely populated as Sydney and Melbourne, and to a lesser extent Brisbane. So we haven't really been affected too much by at least infection in the community. You know, we've had cases here and there, but we've never seen really more than 9. I think we've had 90 cases in the entire. Sorry, 900. I think it was 900 cases maybe in the entire 18 months, where Victoria was seeing 900, 1,000, 1,100 a day recently. You know, in the last couple of months. So I think we're less kind of worried about the case numbers now, because it was a worry 18 months ago because we had no vaccine, we had no protection against COVID whatsoever. And so, 1,000 people get sick, 30% of them end up in hospital. Well, we're something like 4 ICU beds per 1,000 people. So you can see how that very quickly becomes a problem.
Quickly overruns, yeah, exactly.
Whereas now, we might have 800, 900, 1,000 cases a day, but the expectation is there's, maybe 100
much
people
fewer going to hospital.
would get sick enough to go to hospital. So I think because we were so lucky as a nation because we're on an island miles away from everyone else, it was very easy for us to become fixated on COVID zero, which was never realistic. Like, there's always people that have got the flu. There's always people that have got something. It's just never going to be
right.
Zero. And I think we've become so fixated on zero that we get 9 cases and it's like, whoa. Like, let's slam the border shut again. And, coming up to Christmas and, people have made plans to come and visit. And then they're changing rules around quarantine. Like, you've got to quarantine for 7 days or 14 days, depending on if you're double vaxxed or not and things like that. So it's getting a bit murky. And like, the fear that I have is, with 2 kids under 5 that can't be vaccinated, it's like, well, I try and limit my exposure. I try not to go too many places and do too many things because I'm double vaxxed. So I could pick it up somewhere, bring it home. Rhea and I won't be affected. And then suddenly I've got 2 kids that could be sick. That, like, I wouldn't even know I was carrying it until they get sick.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. So,
yep.
This is the worry that we have. Hopefully, I think the FDA has approved Pfizer now for 6
kids.
to 11 or
yep.
5 to 11 or something like that. So, hopefully that should hopefully be coming January. So hopefully under 5s won't be too far off. I think the main thing now is just figuring out what the actual dose is, like how much they give to kids that young, that small, in terms of giving them some coverage. Hopefully there's, enough people vaccinated that they get a bit of protection from it. But, we've got everyone started running around with their arms in the air, like, because Omicron is around now. And it's that, I think we've got like a handful of cases here, but they're all in hotel quarantine and things like that. So it's not too bad, but there's like mixed reports that it's way more transmissible, but it's not as infectious. Like, you don't get as sick from it. But they're saying, like, because kids under 5 are the ones that are basically got no protection whatsoever. They're the ones that are ending up in hospitals at the moment. So I think I've said it before, like, I'm already 34. If I get it now and I have long COVID, well, it's half my life that I have to live with it. But a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, if they get it now, that's like their entire lives. They have to live with whatever complications might come from that we don't know, obviously, because it's only been 2 years. So that is the fear that we live with, that we wake up with every day. And now, they've got laryngitis, so it's bad enough. Like, having a sore throat for a few days is bad enough. Like, fortunately they're sleeping through the night, but they're just very clingy and needy during the day. It makes things a bit difficult. So.
And it doesn't. And so then, as a result of all those things, of course, like, the MacBook, it's like everybody's like the least of their worries is like getting your MacBook to your house. But that sucks for you because you've got to wait for your MacBook to get there. Yeah. I've been enjoying my M1 Max the last couple of weeks and it's been wonderful. So I'm excited for you to get yours. The battery life is just ridiculous. So pretty awesome.
Looking forward to it. See how it goes. Because I got the 16, you got the 14 inch, yeah?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it, man. The small form factor is
So,
great.
so
It's
there.
really, really sweet.
One of the guys that was working in the office that I went into, I went and caught up with them this week, and he got the 14-inch Max, and that thing is a hefty little guy. Like
It is.
he's
It
pretty
really
heavy.
is. Yeah, it's beefy.
Well,
Yep.
there's nothing in it. Like it's like all of the. I mean, the processor is it's all like one chip. It's all solid state. There's no moving parts in it, but it's quite heavy. Like that battery weighs a bit.
It's probably literally just one big freaking heat sink. It's really.
Right.
I mean, the fans never turn on this thing. So yeah, it's pretty nice. I'm really enjoying it. So
Cool.
Anyway, hey, was this episode 108? Is that where we're at?
That's it.
Episode 108, folks. You can find show notes at northmeetsouth.audio/108. Feel free to rate us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars is amazing. Thank you, WorkVivo, for being awesome and sponsoring the show for again this year, helping to pay for another year of hosting with our awesome Transistor FM folks over there. And if you'd like to hit us up on Twitter at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, we'd love to hear from you. And at North South Audio. I think so is that on Twitter. All right, folks. We will see you again next time.
Catch you.